A new political week begins amid more global turmoil and more confidence tests for the Trudeau Liberals. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Another week is underway on Parliament Hill, but global events are top of mind for the Prime Minister and his Foreign Affairs Minister. Prime Minister Trudeau was in Nunavik, Northwest Territories, this week for yesterday's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and he was asked about the situation in Lebanon. Israel now has ground troops in Lebanon. It has launched what the Israeli military has described as localized raids to root out Hezbollah fighters and infrastructure. Israel has also warned people to evacuate nearly 24 Lebanese border communities. Prime Minister Trudeau continues to call for a ceasefire.
Canada is calling for a ceasefire immediately in Lebanon and indeed across the region. I spoke with the Prime Minister of Lebanon yesterday to impress upon him that Canada stands with the Lebanese people and with everyone in the region who wants to see an end to violence and conflict, see people able to return to their homes. We know how excruciatingly difficult this is for so many people to see the upheavals in the region, and Canada continues to work with partners in the region and around the world to push for a ceasefire. We need to see an end to the violence against civilians.
Canada's Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly, addressed the United Nations General Assembly. She called what is happening in the Middle East an unspeakable tragedy.
Thousands have been killed in Israel, in Gaza, and in Lebanon, including many Canadians. This is a senseless war that goes against the dignity of human beings. The suffering on all sides must end. What the world continues to witness is a repeated cycle of violence where civilians pay the heaviest price. Canada is joining those urging Israel and Hezbollah to accept an immediate ceasefire. We need to create space for peace talks and save lives. There cannot be war in Lebanon. Full stop. UN Security Council resolutions must be respected. Families in southern Lebanon and families in northern Israel must be able to safely return to their homes. We have, and always will, insist that civilians be protected wherever they're from.
There are reports now that Iran, which is allied with Hezbollah, is preparing to launch a ballistic missile attack on Israel. That's according to a senior U.S. administration official speaking with American news outlets. Israel's incursion into Lebanon follows weeks of heavy blows against Hezbollah, including an airstrike that killed the terror group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and several of his top commanders. On the home front, there are more votes of non-confidence in the government on the way. The Bloc is planning to let it be known again what it wants from the Liberals in exchange for continued support. The Bloc Québécois wants a 10% increase in OAS payments to seniors starting at age 65. That's not without a big price tag, some $16 billion over a 5-year period. As well, the Bloc wants to further protect supply management and agriculture. That is seen as an effort to woo the dairy farmers of Quebec, a powerful political force. The Bloc wants supply management to be off limits in any future free trade negotiations. And the leader of the Bloc Québécois, Yves-François Blanchet, has set a deadline of the end of the month to make these things happen, or else he says he will start talking to the other party leaders about pulling the plug on this Liberal government.
What we are proposing is good for retired persons in Quebec, but also in Canada. It's good for milk and eggs and poultry product producer in Quebec, but also in Canada. So that's good for everybody. However, we will not ever support any motion or vote that would go against who we are. And who we are is well known. We will not vote in favor of something going against French language in Quebec or even in Canada. We will not vote in favor of something that would go against the collaborative of the state. We will not vote in favor of something that encourages or tolerates hatred in public speech. We will not vote in favor of something which would be bad for Quebec in terms of immigration. We will not go against who and what we are at whatever time you choose. So the government has to remain pretty careful.
The Bloc's demands aren't the only matters the Trudeau Liberals have to deal with in the House this week. There's still another confidence vote today on a motion put forward by the Conservatives calling for a carbon tax election. Voting on that is supposed to be sometime this afternoon after the daily question period. Like last week's vote of non-confidence, it is expected to go down to defeat. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh made a trip to Thunder Bay today. He was meeting with unionized workers at the Alstom railcar plant in that community. Singh says he wants the federal government to provide funding for that plant so it can build replacement subway trains for the TTC in Toronto.
And so my vision is anytime you see a streetcar, anytime you see a subway car, anytime you see a SkyTrain, I want to see a plaque on that says proudly built in Canada. I'd love to see it say proudly built in Thunder Bay. I want to make sure these workers get that respect. And right now, as Justin laid out, we've got a federal government, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, that have been a stick in the mud. They're slowing down this process. We got a deal that's ready to go, and it's waiting on the feds. And Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are just delaying. And it means that these workers don't know what's going to happen next. That could all be resolved immediately. That's what we're calling on today. We need to see rules in place that ensure that workers are a priority. So we want to see Justin Trudeau and the Liberals use the existing powers that we have and say that let's have 25% of content for things like our streetcars, for our subways. Let's see that for subway trains. Let's see 25% Canadian content. Let's see that used. Use that power that we have.
As for the Conservatives, in addition to trying to topple the Liberals again, their social media team released a new ad over the weekend. In the newest video, party leader Pierre Poilievre talks about his life growing up in Alberta. It shows Poilievre and his wife walking hand in hand through fields of green while they raise a Canadian flag. And Mr. Poilievre talks about the dangers of woke obsessions.
Woke obsessions dishonor our history, destroy our education, degrade our military, divide our people. But common sense will lead us home. We'll cap spending, axe taxes, reward work, build homes, uphold families, stop crime, secure borders, rearm our forces, restore our freedom, and unite our people with common values, common sense, common hope for our common home, Canada. Let's bring it home.
Well, it's no wonder Poilievre would like an election now. The latest poll shows he has his Conservative Party riding high. It's a poll from Abacus data, and it gives the Conservatives a 22-point lead over the Liberals, and the Liberals outside of Quebec have fallen into third place, behind the NDP. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, he's at a new time, but he's still bringing the heat on today's top issues. And today we're going to talk about old age security payments and supply management in agriculture. Two newsworthy items. Professor Lee is back. Professor Ian Lee is with the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Good to hear from you.
Good afternoon, Rob.
So I'd like to ask you about these two issues that the Bloc Québécois is putting forward in return for supporting the Liberals. First, the Bloc is calling for a 10% top-up of OAS payments, old age security payments, to seniors starting at age 65. What do you think of that idea?
It is just a terrible, terrible idea, and I am a senior, so I will benefit from this. But let me explain why, and it has nothing to do with the Liberals or the Bloc. We're talking about the policy of giving more money to seniors. I did a paper about 5 years ago with Chancellor Vijay Jog using StatsCan data only, average income of different people in Canada for the cohorts. And what we discovered was what has been discovered many times before by anybody who studies this, that the wealthiest age cohort, as they're called, the age group in Canada, by far and away, are seniors, for obvious reasons. You've been working all your life. You bought your house, 70% to be precise, 69%, and then you pay off your mortgage over many, many years. The house goes up in value. Your debt owed on the house goes down in value to the point you owe no money on it. And so you have the highest average net worth of any age group in Canada. For those who say, but what are you talking about? There's some seniors who are in poverty. Yes, there are. The figure I have, it's 2021, I believe, is about 7% of our seniors are below the poverty line. 7%. So that means 93% are not below the poverty line. And we're in the bottom third of the OECD. The OECD countries are the wealthiest countries in the world. Germany, France, Sweden, Italy, etc. And we are below, at least the last time I got the OECD data, we're below Sweden and Germany. We have lower poverty. So giving an across-the-board increase in OAS, because remember, it's a universal social program. Granted, it's clawed back at a very high amount. I think it's about 130 now. But it's still clawed back. But we're granting a universal program to everybody over 65, whether they need the money or not. And if we really do want to address alleged poverty, there is some, but there's a lot of people that aren't in poverty. The way to go, the optimal way to go, is to make it targeted through the GIS, the Guaranteed Income Supplement, which is geared to income. And that's what the Globe and Mail argues, but it's not just the Globe. We argued that in our paper 5 years ago. The way to deal with poverty is to target those people below the poverty line. You don't say, I'm going to give money to everybody to target poverty. And so this is the flaw in this. By the way, it's enormously expensive. It's another $16 billion, but we're already paying out billions and billions and billions in old age and GIS. And so what this is going to do is make even worse the unfair transfer of wealth, of money, from younger people paying taxes to these older people who do not need it. And that's
it's very interesting because the Liberals are all about, they say generational fairness, but this is really not generationally fair, is it?
No,
Professor?
It's not at all. It's not at all. And again, I'm of the age that's going to benefit from this. Well, actually, I won't because I'll get clawed back. But that's not the point. I mean, we shouldn't be giving income support of any kind to anybody who doesn't need help. It's why I strongly object to getting free drugs. I'm over 65, I get free drugs, which is crazy. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. Of all the people in this country who should be getting free drugs, it's not professors, okay? Or senior public servants.
Right.
Just because we turn 65. It should be targeted to those people who need help below a certain income. I would say
it should be means tested as the Guaranteed Income Supplement is. It's targeted at the poorest seniors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
It is targeted to the poorest, to the lowest income. And I have no problem with that. That's great. Those are the people we should be helping. And that applies to any income support program or any support program. We should only give subsidized daycare to people at the bottom, not the rich corporate lawyers who are partners in law firms. And likewise, pharmacare. We should not be giving it across the board to everybody. We should only be giving it to those people who need help at the bottom. And this is the problem with universality. It's frightfully, frightfully expensive, and it ends up giving lots and lots of free money to people who absolutely do not need help at all in any way, shape, or form because their incomes are quite high. And we can measure this very precisely. So this is a very bad proposal.
Okay. When we come back, you've never been a fan of supply management to begin with, and the Bloc, trying to woo the dairy farmers in Quebec, wants supply management fully protected from any free trade negotiations in the future. So I want to ask you about that. When we come back, Professor Ian Lee is with us from Carleton University here on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Professor Ian Lee from Carleton University in Ottawa. The Bloc Québécois wants to make sure supply management in agriculture is fully protected from any free trade negotiations that may happen in the future between Canada and other countries. What do you think of that idea?
Well, again, it's a bad idea, and I've got data to explain why. Well, first off, the policy itself is very bad. Basically, people don't realize that supply management involves fixing the price at approximately double the market price, and every study has shown this. The OECD, Conference Board of Canada, shows that the price that is fixed in Canada for those products under supply management is about double the market price. And so it exploits poor people by charging higher grocery prices for dairy products. So that's one reason. But then the counter-argument is, well, yeah, but the farmers, we got to save the farmers, protect the farmers. Well, when dairy management was set up by Pierre Elliott Trudeau in 1971, there were 150,000 dairy farmers in Canada. Today, there's less than 9,000. So what's happened is there's consolidation going on. People are switching from cow milk or dairy milk to other types of milk, like almond milk and soy milk and that sort of thing. And so the policy never protected the dairy farmer. If you've gone from 150,000 to 9,000, you can't argue that it's working. I'm not saying it caused them to disappear and consolidate and retire, but you can't say it protected them and saved them because there's 140,000 less dairy farmers today. And what's happening is what was going on in agriculture writ large corporate farms, agricorps, are becoming the dominant form of production. So this is just a backdoor way of subsidizing very wealthy agricultural corporations as they increasingly buy up and take over this industry. And the small farmers, the very few that are left, fade away and disappear and retire.
So why do you think they're pushing for it then?
I think the Bloc is looking for ways to, differentiate themselves from the other parties, to say to the Quebec voters, "Hey, we've got your back." So I think I think it's politics for sure, and it's symbolic politics because let's be clear, there aren't millions and millions of dairy farmer voters.
Right.
So nobody can even say, "Well, they're doing this for the votes." I mean, okay, there's 9,000 dairy farmers. By the way, they're not all in Quebec. They're about half and half between Quebec and Ontario. So there's probably about I'd have to look up the numbers, but I'm sure I'm not far off. Probably about 4,000, maybe 4,000.
They're very politically active, though.
Yeah,
right.
But it's tiny. The numbers are tiny, and so the idea that they're going to win the election just on this, it isn't. But it sends a signal to voters in Quebec: Hey, we're the Bloc, and we're supporting Quebec interests.
Right.
So I think it's
and the family farm. We're standing up for the family farm.
So there's a lot of, shall we say, virtue signaling here.
Virtue signaling.
But more importantly, we haven't brought this up yet, and this is very, very important, Rob. It's very
Just a
important.
minute left. Yeah.
It's that this because the government of the United States publishes an annual report to Congress. It's very public from the U.S. Trade Rep, and they list all the trade irritants. And guess what? This one is right at the top of the list.
Oh yeah.
This drives the Americans crazy.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing we need to be doing is driving them crazy when they're already angry at us, and both parties want to put more protectionism against Canada. The last thing we need to do is, tempt the beast.
Right.
Let's not do that.
Don't poke the bear,
Don't
so to speak.
poke the bear when the bear's angry.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. We'll see what happens with both of those issues, an OAS top up and more protections for the protected supply management segments of agriculture. Thank you, Professor Lee. Good to hear from you at your new time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy speaking with you. Thanks.
Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Our Newsday panel right after the news here on City News.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
On a very busy news day, time for our Newsday panel. Gary Keller is Vice President of Strategy Corps, and he is in Poland right now, where it's just after 6:30 in the evening. Hello, Gary.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, along with Jordan Paquette, Senior Consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group, who I suspect is in Ottawa today. How are you, Jordan?
Hi, Rob. Indeed, I am. Not as interesting as being in Poland, but hello, Gary. Good afternoon.
Yeah, it's great to hear from everybody. So, Gary, you are at something called the Warsaw Security Forum. What is that? What's on the agenda, and why would it be important for Canada?
Warsaw Security Forum is one of these international defense, security, and foreign policy forums that takes place
around the calendar year. But it's about 1,500 different people from not just civil society, but foreign ministers, defense ministers. There's a large delegation here from Ukraine as well. Obviously, where we're located, the discussion around Ukraine, Russia is very top of mind. We're almost 1,000 days into Russia's illegal and immoral war against Ukraine, and so that's obviously a very big topic of discussion. There's a brand new Ukrainian foreign minister, so he's here as part of the discussions as well. But in addition to that, of course, lots of talk about the U.S. election and what that means for security for Europe, no matter who wins that election. But there was also a large section today talking about energy security, and it was refreshing to hear even some European ministers say, we've got to get real. We're not going to have the green revolution overnight. And in a country like Poland, which currently burns 60% coal, natural gas is a solution, at least as a transition fuel for the medium term. So, when the Prime Minister says there's no market for Canadian natural gas, the only reason there's not a market for Canadian natural gas is we've been too slow and behind the eight ball all these years. But there is definitely interest in this part of the world, especially when you're burning coal.
Okay. That's very interesting. I would like, because we have Gary on the line, and Gary used to work for Foreign Minister John Baird back in the day. The situation now with Israel moving into Lebanon, and in particular the Canadian position that we're hearing on these issues. Mr. Trudeau yesterday calling for a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. Melanie Joly at the United Nations. We demand a ceasefire. Gary, what do you think about what you're hearing from the top people in Canadian politics about the situation in the Middle East right now?
Well, they're obviously trying to have their cake and eat it too, and trying to use language that balances out domestic considerations rather than real politics of the situation on the ground. But I also saw Minister Hussein out earlier today saying that Israel's ground invasion of South Lebanon was not helpful for all sides. Well, it's certainly not helpful for Hezbollah. It's probably pretty helpful for all the people in Israel who live up against the border there. And so that's just patently ridiculous. But, it's just more the usual the line coming out of the government. It's not surprising. It's disappointing, but it's not surprising.
Yeah, it would seem, Jordan, there are real divisions within the Liberal caucus right now on what's happening in the Middle East. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And it's very clear that it's coming out. I think, at least in the Liberal caucus, they've tended to, beyond a few key MPs, have moved beyond the traditional support for Israel. But they are, to Gary's point, trying to have their cake and eat it too. They are trying to play both sides of the issue. It's all about domestic politics right now. Israel is over there completely disrupting, degrading these alliances of terror throughout. We don't know what Iran's next move is going to be. And the current Liberal government is just not being taken seriously on the world stage because they just don't have the power to back it up. And they don't have the credibility because they've been on all sides of this issue. So it is spilling out into the Liberal caucus, into Parliament, and it's going to be a tricky line for them to walk going forward.
Yeah. And just, before we get back to Gary, what's your take on where Canada stands now on recognition of a Palestinian state? Because there seems to be a great deal of departure on Canada's traditional position on that. Jordan, what do you make of it? It's one thing for the New Democrats to say it, quite something else for the Liberals to abstain from a vote on it, for example.
No, absolutely. And the Liberals are going to, as I was mentioned, they're going to look at their seat map and where can they win the most seats based on how this is going to break down. So if they feel, going more side on calling for a Palestinian state, as other countries like Ireland and New Zealand have done, they may very well go out and do that. But kind of already cast aside the seats of some of the more predominantly Jewish ridings that they have. But again, that's the fine line that they're going to have to walk. But I think they will kind of look at the seat map and map out their course from there.
Okay. What do you think about the way this government approaches that issue, Gary? The Liberals calls to recognize a Palestinian state.
Well, I mean, I think it's, from government, having proudly worked for a government that would have principled foreign policy, we came to the state of Israel, a two-state solution for sure, but, that Israel also has the right to defend itself by itself. I expect, nothing less from this liberal government. They're trying to have both sides of the issue. And to your point, staying from a vote, if they feel like there is a political win in it, by all means, it would not surprise me if they came out and voted in favor of that. But we're not quite there yet. And I'm sure that there's certainly some resistance, definitely within the Liberal Party, probably within the caucus and within the PMO itself, to going that far. But you know what? Politics, when you're in a dangerous spot politically, sometimes you do things to try to gain whatever advantage you can.
Okay, we'll be right back. It's our Newsday panel. We're going to try and get a better connection with Gary, but he is in Poland, so we will forgive him. I'm Rob Snow. Lots to talk about. More confidence votes in the House this week. Key demands from the Bloc Québécois. We have provincial election campaigns that are underway right now. 3 of them, if you can believe that. All in the same month. BC, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan. We'll talk about all of these things. I'm Rob Snow. It's News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Jordan Pickett is with us. He's in Ottawa today. He's a senior consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group, longtime conservative strategist. Gary Keller, we are connecting with Gary via his landline in Warsaw, Poland. Hopefully that'll have some better phone quality. He's vice president of Strategy Corps. He's in Warsaw at a big security conference. Gary, are you with me, Gary?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Oh, that sounds much better. Yeah. Thank you so much for switching phones. So, Jordan, let's start with you on kind of this week in the House of Commons, this month in the House of Commons, I guess. So the Bloc has these 2 demands. We want improvements to the OAS, a 10%, $16 billion top up to the OAS for seniors starting at 65, and then protections for supply management in any free trade negotiations, basically taking supply management and agriculture off the table, non-negotiable. What's the likelihood the Bloc and Liberals can agree on either of these things? What do you think?
Well, it seems like the supply management one, it's going to pass. I mean, it's into the Senate. There's some mild opposition there, but it generally has the backing of most parties in the House. The older security one is going to be much more interesting and contentious. I mean, we're talking about a legislation with a $16 billion price tag. That's billions. Where is the fiscal room coming for this? And to be able to try and rush this bill through before the end of October, it's going to need a royal recommendation. It still hasn't cleared. It hasn't even started in the Senate because it can't get there without that royal recommendation. So this is going to be a very long process. I'll be interested to see what the Bloc is willing to do to kind of water down their position to avoid this October 29th deadline. But if they're going hard and fast on it, I don't see a way that this bill passes. And even if it does pass, I mean, it's just going to drag the government on for another few months. So if this is how the Liberals are going to act for the next while and just acquiesce and cave to every single demand that any opposition party comes up to, no matter what the price tag of, we're in for a really rough ride for the next 6 months as Canadians, as far as public spending is concerned.
Okay. On these 2 demands from the Bloc Québécois, what do you think, Gary?
Yeah, on the supply management, again, that one seemed to, I was shocked even with how the Conservatives voted on it, for the most part sending it through the House of Commons completely. And so that's ongoing. Obviously, that is going to be a massive red flag for our American friends. We're just going to see this as one more item where Canada is untrustworthy, especially with a potential review of NAFTA 2.0 in the next couple of years. And of note, not just Donald Trump has noted that he could take advantage of it. Kamala Harris has said that she supports a review of CUSMA or NAFTA 2.0 as well. So put that on the back burner for a second and move to the OAS. Yeah, I mean, that is a huge hit to the fiscal framework and a huge hit to everybody's pocketbook. But you know what, Mr. Blanchette from the Bloc, he thinks he has a card to play. Just less than an hour ago, he was out with a tweet saying that 1 million retirees in Quebec and 4 million in Canada have been deprived of a fair indexation of their purchasing power since before COVID-19. We do what our trust dictates, including taking down the government if necessary. So another throwdown from Monsieur Blanchette and the Bloc saying, we really want this. We'll have to see where negotiations go. These things often hinge on those negotiations, and as of last week when they made their demands, they said they hadn't had any discussions yet. But, yeah, this is a very real issue. Will it lead, though, to the defeat of the government before Christmas? I am still quite skeptical of that.
Yeah, me too. I want to ask Jordan about that. This deadline, October 29th. How firm do you think that is, October 29th?
Well, I think, and that's where I was just saying they may look to water it down. Say, okay, if we have a commitment from the government that they're going to do something with this, then we'll allow it to go. But at the same time, let's not forget, they do still need all three opposition parties to bring down the government. Just the Conservatives and the Bloc voting together doesn't give them enough votes. So the NDP could very well just sit back and, yes, they've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement, but they could just decide that, a few of their members are sick that day or twisted their ankle on the way into the Commons and have to sit back and just not force it. It's the NDP here is that factor that's just really not ready for a campaign at this point. But at some point, they may look at the polling numbers and see, okay, some recent ones have us fairly close to the Liberals. Maybe this is a time where we have to throw a Hail Mary as well and capitalize on that. So watch for the NDP in all of this as well. I know we're looking at the Bloc, but we will have to take a look at what they're going to do.
I could see October 29th arriving and these parties say, well, progress is being made. Negotiations are ongoing. And I just don't see the government falling and MPs hitting some kind of campaign trail 2 weeks out from Remembrance Day. I don't know about that. I don't think it'd be a good look for them to go trolling for votes when they're usually back in their communities, going to cenotaphs and visiting Legion halls and going to Remembrance Day ceremonies. I think it's way more likely that the government is going to at least make it to the Christmas break. What do you guys think? Jordan?
I think that's what most people are definitely thinking, that we're looking into kind of more of an early spring election. The Liberals will cook up some budget with some type of poison pill in it or some big broad agenda, and I think everyone will decide that's about time. I will note, elections have been held where Christmas was kind of a break point in the campaign as well. I remember back in when Stephen Harper first won government. So looking at Parliament right now, I do agree. I think odds are that we're not looking at one this year anymore. But at the same time, looking at how acrimonious things have gotten in the House of Commons right now,
oh yeah,
it's going to be a very unproductive few months leading up to whatever's going to be in that budget, whenever the next election is. And,
just quickly on Gary, on October 29th, do you think that comes and goes, and this government lasts until at least the Christmas break, say mid-December sometime?
Yeah, I do, and I think to your point, like they could come up with saying like, well, it'll be in maybe the fall economic statement. That bill won't be passed until the new year, or it'll be in the next budget, and then it won't be in the next budget, and then we're off to the races. I think that is much more likely of a situation. But kudos to Monsieur Blanchette for trying to play the cards that he's got handed to him.
Yeah. Okay, when we come back, we'll turn our attention to provincial affairs. It's if you like election campaigns, you have a lot to choose from right now. BC, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, all in election campaigns. We'll ask our panelists about it when we return to the Newsday panel on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now you know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
And by the way, right after the news at the top of the hour, it is the Talkback. We're doing 2 hours of Talkback, call-in radio on the big issues of the day and getting your take on them every day from now on. The final 2 hours of our program. We're here with Gary Keller and Jordan Pickett. It's our Newsday panel. We have 3 provincial election campaigns all underway at the same time. British Columbia, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan. Gary, what are some similar issues that we might hear during the next federal election campaign? I'm thinking things like cost of living, housing, maybe even immigration, stuff like that, right?
Sure. I mean, those are all cross-cutting, I think, across all three provincial elections, but a little bit of difference, I think, in each of them. You know, BC, for sure, crime and the NDP government's drug policy, you know, they're all kind of tied together with the level of, you know, petty crime on the streets, assault, all those sorts of things. That is sort of part of the discussion, as well as the carbon tax. You know, David Eby has backed away from the carbon tax in BC, and John Rustad seems to have all the momentum behind him. With Saskatchewan, healthcare is a big issue. And of course, you know, they've been in power for 5 terms, so, you know, longevity is an issue there. And New Brunswick is kind of a 50-50 battle right now. You know, healthcare is also an issue, but, you know, policies of Blaine Higgs and, you know, having been an incumbent for the last, 7 or 8 years, you know, incumbency does take a toll on you, especially when, you know, cost of living is up and it's easy for people to blame. So 2 differences there across, but some similarities as well.
All right. Jordan, what do you see as similarities across these campaigns to issues that might come up during the next federal election campaign?
Yeah, I mean, certainly affordability for Canadians, I think, is top of mind still right now, and that's going to be the case in most of these elections, whether it's issues related to the carbon tax, local taxation, or then trickling into other issues like healthcare and whatnot as well. Crime in BC, but I do agree it's that incumbency factor or the anti-incumbency factor. I think current polling shows that, and this is going to be the case at the federal level as well, is that Canadians are tired, they're frustrated, they're facing affordability challenges everywhere, so they're going to look at the first chance that they have to vote against a government or to make change. I think on the federal side, that's going to be much more of an important factor, but locally, some of these campaigns are just going to come down to some really close local races.
Okay. Hey, great to hear from you, especially you, Gary. Thanks for calling in all the way from Warsaw, Poland today. That was a real treat for us. Really appreciate the time.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, that's Gary Keller. He's Vice President at Strategy Corp. Jordan Paquette, thank you so much. We'll speak soon. Yeah, bye-bye. Senior Consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group. So again, the Talkback Hour is coming up right after the news at the top of the hour, 2 hours from now on to take your calls on some of the biggest issues in the news. 1-833-668-2577. We'll get to the topics and your calls coming up on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
This is Talkback. 2 hours to discuss and debate the big issues of the day. We have lots of topics in the mix for you today to think about, comment on. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I have some questions, some issues to kind of get the conversation started today. 2 hours instead of 1. New territory for me. Haven't done 2 hours of call-in radio in a long time. So lots of time to take calls today. Here's one. There is now a 100% tariff on any electric vehicle imported from China into Canada. Canada followed the United States lead, imposed this huge tariff on any Chinese-made electric vehicles, 100%. So now that these tariffs are in effect, maybe we should revisit this. Do you think that that was the right decision by the Trudeau Liberals to impose these tariffs, or the wrong decision to impose these tariffs on cheap, made in China electric vehicles from a government that says it wants all of us driving electric vehicles, will mandate that we're only allowed to drive electric vehicles by the year 2035. I'd love your take on that. 1-833-668-2577. In federal politics, there was another poll released just yesterday, Abacus data poll. And like all the other polls, it shows that the Conservatives have a big lead over the Liberals. It's a lead of 22 points. And in fact, it says outside of Quebec, the Liberals are actually in third place. in the rest of Canada, and the NDP has moved up into second place. So, look, there's no election on the horizon right now, but if there was an election held today, Pierre Poilievre would become the prime minister, and he would lead a big conservative majority government. So the Liberals keep saying, and you're going to hear this a lot, I'd love to know what you think about it. Poilievre and the Conservatives have a hidden agenda. They have a hidden agenda. They're not being upfront. They're not being honest with you about what they really want to do to the country. So I want to run it by you. Do you think the Conservatives have a hidden agenda? And if you do, what do you think is part of the hidden agenda? If the Conservatives actually do go on and win the next election, whenever that happens to be, what do you think the Conservatives are planning to do that they're not telling Canadians about right now? Do you think they have a hidden agenda? And if so, what's part of the hidden agenda? Give me a call if you want to comment on that. The drug crisis, supervised injection sites or supervised consumption sites, they've been all over the news in recent weeks. There is a big push on all across the country to close these facilities down. Supervised injection sites, supervised consumption sites, whatever you want to call them. You think that's the right direction to move in? Or do you think that's misguided, could make things actually worse? And if a supervised injection site closes down, what should replace it? Because you read the news on any given day from Ontario to Alberta to British Columbia, there's a big shift underway. And the tide is turning on the availability of these sites. So if they're going to close, what should be done instead to help people who are addicted to drugs? If it's not this, then what? 1-833-668-2577. On the lighter side of things, I noticed the minimum wage is going up today in several Canadian provinces. In Ontario, the minimum wage is $17.20 an hour now. $17.20 an hour. $17.20 an hour. Holy smokes. It's going up to $15 an hour in Saskatchewan, $15.80 an hour in Manitoba, and $16 an hour in Prince Edward Island. The minimum wage. I'm just be curious. What was the minimum wage when you started working? And what kind of work were you doing at the time, if you were making the minimum wage? And do you think you can, quote, make ends meet earning the minimum wage? A lot of people think the minimum wage is too low. I remember when it was the fight for 15. Now people are saying $15 an hour is not enough. And that the minimum wage should be $20 an hour. $20 an hour for a minimum wage. So look, a lot of material for a Tuesday, and we have 2 hours to work with from now on. Yeah, 2 hours. We're going to take calls on hot topics and the big issues for 2 hours instead of just 1 hour. It's something that bosses want to try, and we'll see how it goes. But call-in radio only works if you actually call in. So we'd love to hear from you today. Again, the call-in line is 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. And we always love to hear from first-time callers. If you're a first-time caller, just mention that to our call screener, and we'll make your call a priority. We have made in China electric cars, 100% tariff on any electric vehicle imported from China. It comes into effect today, that tariff. Tariffs on aluminum and steel, they're coming in the middle of the month. Right decision, wrong decision by the electric vehicle obsessed Trudeau Liberals to impose these tariffs on cheap, made-in-China EVs. Do you think the Conservatives have a hidden agenda? The Liberals are warning that the Conservatives have a hidden agenda. The accusation is the Conservatives aren't being honest and open about what their real agenda is, what their policies really are. Do you think the Conservatives have a hidden agenda? And if you do, what do you think is part of the hidden agenda? supervised injection sites, supervised drug consumption sites, closing down in many parts of the country. Right direction, wrong direction. Could it make the drug crisis even worse? And the minimum wage going up today, several Canadian provinces, $17.20 an hour in Ontario. What was the minimum wage when you started working? What kind of work were you doing? Can you make ends meet earning the minimum wage? Should it even be higher than where it is now where you are? So some people are saying $20 an hour. You have to make $20 an hour as the minimum wage. 1-833-668-2577. Please join us for Talk Back 2 hours from now on. Love to hear from you. Every single phone line available. Your call's coming up. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So any number of issues for you to comment on now. Made in China EVs. There's a 100% tariff on those cars now. Love to know your thoughts on that. Closing supervised injection sites, supervised drug consumption sites. A lot of pushback against those facilities all across the country now. Do you think that's a move in the right direction to close those facilities down, or could it make the drug crisis even worse? $17.20 an hour is the minimum wage as of today in the province of Ontario. It's going up in 4 provinces as of today. What was the minimum wage when you started working? What kind of work were you doing? Some people say the minimum wage should be higher, should be $20 an hour. What do you think about that? And the Liberals are saying the Conservatives have a hidden agenda, that they aren't being honest about some of their policies. Do you think the Conservatives have a hidden agenda? And if you do, what's part of that hidden agenda that they're not talking about? 1-833-668-2577. Dave in Halifax. Thanks for calling, Dave. Hi there, Dave.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, Dave. Thank you. On the hidden agenda, you want to talk about the hidden agenda?
Yeah, I'd love to. First time caller, so calling from sunny, beautiful Halifax.
Appreciate that.
I think you know the agenda from my perspective is definitely on the Liberal side. Like this,
okay.
This just seems to me to be fear-mongering at its best. And, you know, I'm not surprised by that, because I think one of the things that our Prime Minister has been doing over at least half of his political career as Prime Minister is you know, dividing Canadians and fear-mongering a lot, whether it's fear-mongering, you know, on a whole range of things, from climate change to EVs to the very discussions that, you know, you're wanting people to have. And you know, one of the ones that you hear, the rhetoric you hear in Parliament right now, especially from the PM, is that, you know, like the Conservatives just want to be in power, like Poilievre just wants to be Prime Minister. Well, that's true, because I don't think anybody could do a worse job than Trudeau's doing. So if I was Poilievre, I'd want to be sitting in the big seat, in the big chair, because, like, Trudeau's a disaster in so many ways. And so
okay.
I think, you know, knowing that you're running now, as you updated, third in the polls, with really having 9 years to try and do a lot of stuff and essentially not done much except grow government much bigger and put us further in debt. Well, of course, I think he's pretty desperate right now. So I think that's the agenda. I think the agenda is to scare Canadians that the boogeyman is somewhere hiding in the Conservative Party.
Okay.
When I don't think there's any evidence of that.
Okay, Dave. Great first call. Hope it's not your last call. Good to hear from you.
All right. Thanks for taking the call.
Yep. I mean, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, I mean, they're certainly, I mean, they've been riding high in the polls. We had this poll from Havoc Estate over the weekend, 22-point lead for the Conservatives over the Liberals. And outside of Quebec, the Liberals have fallen to third place, and the NDP has moved up into second place. Everywhere except Quebec, where the Liberals are in second place and the Bloc is in first place. So it's just one more poll that confirms what all the other polls have been saying, and all the other polls have been saying, and they've been saying it for more than a year, that Canadians don't think the Liberals should be reelected. Change is in the air, and the option most Canadians prefer right now to change things up is the Conservative Party led by Pierre Poilievre. Now, there's no election on the horizon, despite the non-confidence votes. There's not going to be an election anytime soon. But the Liberals, I'm hearing this more and more, and it's a well-worn attack line, and it's not just Liberals who use it against Conservatives. It goes both ways. But the Liberals are warning that the Conservatives have a hidden agenda. They're hiding their real agenda from you. What we want to know today is, do you think that's true? And if so, what do you think might be part of a conservative hidden agenda? If the Conservatives do have a hidden agenda, what do you think they're hiding from Canadians? If they form the government after the election, what do you think they're going to do that they're not being upfront about right now, that they're refusing to reveal to Canadians right now? Share your thoughts with me. We're doing 2 hours of call-in radio from now on. I'm a political junkie, folks. I can talk politics with people for hours and hours and hours, but I need another person in order to have that conversation. I'd love to have your thoughts if you have some doubts maybe about what the Conservatives might actually do if they actually win the next election and actually form the government. I think that there are two big things that the Liberals are going to push in their attacks on this front, the hidden agenda front. One is going to be abortion, and the other will be cuts and austerity. I think that those will be the main lines of attacks from the Liberals when it comes to going after Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. It's going to be about abortion. It's going to be cuts and austerity. And you can't trust the Conservatives because they have a hidden agenda. It's our talkback. 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Minimum wages going up in several provinces today. Also across the country, the push us on from many politicians to try and move to close down supervised injection sites. We can talk about that. Tariffs on cheap Chinese-made electric vehicles now in effect, a 100% tariff. And the Liberals warning that the Conservatives have a hidden agenda. They have a hidden agenda. So lots of things in the mix for us to talk about today. Elizabeth from High River, thanks for calling, Elizabeth.
Hi there. I want to comment quickly on just two little things. We're listening to a talk show here in the car. Is it causing a problem there? Anyhow, one of it is just Trudeau. He's using Trump's tactics and scaring people that it's a hidden agenda. Axe the tax is always what Pierre Poilievre wants because it's not doing anything for us Canadians. In the last few years, we've changed our furnaces to high-efficient furnace, and I'm being penalized, $60 to $80 a month on carbon tax because I've got a high-efficient furnace, and he wants us now to go electric. And our electric prices are ridiculous because we don't have a grid in Alberta. We had warm weather for 2 weeks in Alberta, and the grid was maxed, and they were asking us to cut back on using our appliances. And so, unless you follow through on your project, he's not producing any. In High River, we've got 6 charging stations. If everybody from High River who works in Calgary drives, we don't have the capacity to fix everybody's car. Anyhow, that's my one topic. And the other topic was this bit about putting on a tariff. If people could get cheaper electric cars, they may be able to afford and would help the climate change. But he's not helping it. He's just trying to play the game of whatever the U.S. does, we'll follow through. So that was my two little comments.
Yeah, sure. Well, just while I have you on the line, I'd like to run a few of these things by you, because the Trudeau government would come back to you, Elizabeth, and they would say, Elizabeth, whatever you are paying in carbon tax on your utility bills or to fill up your car, whatever the case might be, you're getting all of that back in the form of rebates 4 times a year.
Well, I'll tell you something. We hardly used any gas in the summer, and it still doesn't pay for what he gives back. it because I not only do it on groceries, I do it when I have to drive my car to the city and different things like that. It's not just on one thing. It puts up the price of groceries, the price of the diesel that goes up with the cars that come. It's a million little things that when you add it up, and plus then they hired all these people in Ottawa to pump out these checks every 4 months or whatever they do it. And when you add it up, they're probably running at a deficit, and that's why they're putting all these extra taxes on everything.
Well, it is apparently quite an expensive operation. One figure that I saw from Blacklock's reporter was that it was $200 million a year to administer the carbon tax rebates. $200 million a year to send the checks out. Now, on electric vehicles, again, the tariffs come into effect today, the 100% tariff on the made in China electric vehicles. They say that's about, we have to protect our own industry. We have to protect our jobs in the auto belt of Southern Ontario, for example. What about all of those auto workers?
Well, yes, they are producing cars, but people aren't buying the cars. The average person can't afford an electric car. And again, we go back to it. He's talking about everybody has it, but he hasn't done anything for the industry. He's waiting for the industries to put up all these stations, and come up with better alternatives for, cutting back the carbon capture. But if we sold our natural gas, like when he told Germany, no way are we going to sell it, we could be stopping the carbon in Europe and everything like that. We can give it to India and China and all the countries that...
Gotcha, Elizabeth. Okay. Thank you. I hear you. Thank you. Great points all around. 1-833-668-2577. Join our talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
4 issues in the mix that we want to run by you today. One is this 100% tariff on any electric vehicle imported into Canada from China. That came into effect today. Right decision, wrong decision. Slapping 100% tariffs on cheap made in China EVs. On the drug crisis across the country, there's a push on by many conservative politicians to close supervised injection sites, supervised consumption sites. What do you think about that issue? Do you think that's the right direction to move in? Would it just make the crisis even worse, the drug crisis? Minimum wages going up in several Canadian provinces today, $17.20 an hour. For example, in the province of Ontario, $17.20 an hour. What was the minimum wage when you started working? What kind of work were you doing? Can you make ends meet earning even that kind of minimum wage, $17.20 an hour? Some people say has to be higher than that. You should make the minimum wage $20 an hour, $20 an hour. And the Liberals warning that the Conservatives have a hidden agenda. Do you think the Conservatives have a hidden agenda? What could be part of the hidden agenda? What are they not telling you about? Alex in Halifax. Alex, thanks for calling, Alex.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm good, Alex. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to be on the show. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this hidden agenda. Quite frankly, it deeply frustrates me that either side is, on the political spectrum is willing to throw shade at the other side, but they're not willing to tell us which members of parliament have been implicated in foreign interference.
Right.
Nobody's willing to share that information, and it's really frustrating as a voter trying to figure out, this hidden agenda. Well, is it even a Canadian hidden agenda, or is it coming from somewhere else?
Okay. I just wonder how you would move forward with that. People, callers to the show over the months, as that news came to light, that either members of parliament or former parliamentarians were acting on behalf of other countries. They wonder how you could possibly identify those people without ruining their careers, making sure that you had, the proof. How would somebody defend themselves against such an accusation? Those are some of the concerns that people have raised with me. What would you say to that, Alex?
Certainly, but at the end of the day, politicians are public servants, so they should be held accountable in some way or another. You know, once there is definitive proof that there has been some interference, they should be charged like the rest of us, potentially in some kind of conspiracy to undermine our current system. Obviously, when the police lay a charge, they don't just do that with no evidence. Once there's enough evidence that perhaps interference could take place, maybe, you know, it's the same thing that if, you know, somebody is suspected of committing a murder, they're not guilty as soon as they're charged, but maybe if a politician is interacting with foreign governments and not letting Canadians know about it, maybe they shouldn't be in politics. I don't have sympathy for that.
Yeah, I understand that. You know, these accusations are the result of reports from intelligence agencies, but to this point, nobody's been charged with anything. So would you identify someone before, say, for example, the RCMP laid a charge against someone? An espionage charge or something like that? Or a breach of trust charge or something like that?
I think it depends maybe on where we are in an election cycle. If Canadians are making an informed choice on who they're trying to put into office.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's something that Canadians should know if somebody's under investigation.
Yeah, I know, and I would love to know who they are as well. I sympathize along with everyone else, but you know, would the police come out, say, for any other crime? Would the police come out and say, we are investigating Alex, for example, for this crime? Right? They wouldn't do that. They would say, we've had an investigation and we have, as a result of our investigation, we have charged Alex with this crime. And now it's up to Alex to defend himself. Right? That's the way people think it should go forward. Right?
Yes. I'm just very curious as to what this evidence actually was. And it seems that nobody is really willing to speak to that on any political party.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Alex. Good to hear from you on that particular topic. Let's go to Bradley in Halifax on EVs. Bradley, hi there. Oh, Bradley's gone. Bradley is gone. That's okay. Yeah. So these tariffs came into effect today on made in China electric cars, Chinese-made EVs. I know this is something we've talked about before. I think it's kind of worth talking about again and just getting your reaction. Canadian government imposing tariffs on electric vehicles made in China. 100% tariff on EVs made in China. What do you think of that policy from the Liberal government? I think it's kind of weird because this government it's just so gung-ho on all things electric. Clean electricity, get yourself a heat pump, we'll pay for it, for crying out loud. The carbon tax, electric cars, and yet, I mean, the fact of it is that this will make it more difficult for Canadians to buy the most affordable electric cars in the world from the biggest source country for electric cars, which is China. The government says this is all about protecting jobs here in Canada, where the government, along with provincial governments like Ontario, I mean, you and I both know it, they're sparing no expense when it comes to spending big money on the electric car business. I think along with all the provincial incentives, I mean, the amount of money involved in something like this is in excess of $50 billion or so for electric vehicle battery plants and other plants to make other components for EVs. The government says these Chinese-made electric cars are being dumped. That's the allegation. They're dumping them into markets all over the world. They are heavily subsidized. The government of China, this would be the Canadian line, doesn't have the same kind of labor standards we do, or workplace safety standards, or environmental standards. And that's part of the reason why they can sell these cars at such a huge discount compared to other automakers in other parts of the world. So if you want to weigh in on that, 1-833-668-2577. Back on the phone lines coming up. It's the first hour of the Talkback. 2 hours of Talkback from now on. Your calls coming up next here on News Radio.
something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Feel free to weigh in on any of our topics today in the first hour of Talk Back today. Danny in Halifax. Hi, Danny.
How you doing?
I'm good, Danny. Thanks for calling.
First-time caller. I'm a
Appreciate
military vet, and I wanted to talk about the politicians, the MPs that were involved with the Chinese government or influence.
Foreign interference, yeah.
None of them got charged or anything else, or even their names brought out. Now, if they were in the military, there'd be the front page with their names, and they're screwed then, right from the get-go.
Okay.
Right? Why didn't they at least say their names, then let them defend themselves, just like people in the military have to do?
Okay. Would you think they should release their names even if they're not facing any kind of charge at all?
Yes.
Yes.
Because they do it. They're the ones who they do it for them. If you're a military member, their names are brought up. He might be facing sexual allegations. Nothing's been done. There hasn't been any trial, no investigation. But somebody mentioned it. So those guys lost jobs, ended careers. And I think if MP does it, their name should be put out there and let the people decide if their career is going to be.
Okay. But what if you don't know if they did it, that it's just an allegation and there hasn't been an investigation by law enforcement or a criminal charge laid by a Crown prosecutor? You'd still just... the accusation would be you're throwing these people to the wolves and you're going to ruin their careers. And what happens if it's not true?
That's what they do with the military.
Okay.
How many times have military senior officers been brought up? Yeah, no, they're facing allegations of this. They get removed from their job. Then they end up suing the government and winning millions of dollars because they were wrongly accused. So if they're wrongly accused, then they can do the same thing back, right?
Okay.
But if they're not wrongly accused, then they should pay the price.
Okay, I'm just presenting the other side and playing devil's advocate because some people would say that's a lack of due process, sir, right?
But they hold that standard for our military.
Okay.
So why can't they hold that standard for themselves?
For the parliamentarians. Okay, Danny, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Danny. Good to hear from you. I appreciate the call. Mike in Kitchener is up next. Hi, Mike. What's on your mind, Mike?
Greetings. Hello.
Hi.
Well, as far as this hidden agenda with Pierre Poilievre, don't forget they said the same thing about Harper. And the second thing they said about him, he's going to ban abortion. Well, they never told us what his hidden agenda was. They never told us how do they even know. And they never apologized after this secret hidden agenda never came out. And they do the lefties do the same. They did the same thing with Trump when he was in power. They said he has his finger on the nuclear button. And they said the same thing about Reagan. These people say anything to get in power. They don't apologize once they're proven wrong. You know.
Okay.
And, as far as the minimum wage, I wish everybody could be making $30 an hour, but even at $15 an hour, and you got 4 employees, you got to make $1 a minute profit just to pay them. Not to mention the insurance, taxes, rent, hydro, and everything else. And you notice almost all the people that are. I have worked for minimum wage. I'm not crazy about it, but that's the way it was. And
sure,
the people who are in favor of minimum wage, or rather high minimum wages, you notice they're always the people that don't employ anybody with their own money. They're usually government employees, and they are experts.
Union leaders for the most part. I see them calling for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all great, but in Ontario, our $100,000-a-year teachers don't teach much of any use, and they pump out hundreds of thousands of unskilled laborers every year, and employers can only pay so much for unskilled laborers, so we can put the onus on our $100,000-a-year teachers for that situation.
Well, I just noticed in Ontario, where I worked for the minimum wage in Ontario for a long time, it was, $6.85 an hour, and I earned every penny of that $6.85 an hour. Let me tell you, it was hard work in food service. I just see it here, $17.20 an hour, and then I read like the Canadian Labor Congress says it's not enough.
Yeah.
Should be $20 an hour. Well, how much am I going to pay for a Big Mac at McDonald's? Or how much am I going to pay for a coffee at Tim Hortons with a $20 an hour minimum wage? You wonder why you can't feed a family of 2 people at McDonald's for less than $30 these days. Maybe $17.20 an hour has something to do with it.
That's why I guess it started in California. The McDonald's are becoming automated. They can't afford to pay anymore. We can't afford to pay the employees unless people want to pay $12 for a Big Mac. Something's got to give.
Okay, something's got to give. $17.20 an hour. I remember, when I was a younger man, if I was making $17 an hour, I would have thought I had it made, Mike. But I guess times have changed, and you could still rent a decent apartment for $600 a month and not $2,000 a month. So I get everything is relative these days. Yeah, but $17.20 an hour. Whatever happened to the fight for 15? That used to be all the rage. The fight for $15 an hour.
Yeah.
They've won, I guess.
Yeah, I wish some other people would phone in on my comment on my comments, because I haven't forgotten about the stuff with about the abortion with Harper and then the secret agenda.
Soldiers in the streets, sir. They said he was going to have soldiers in the streets.
Yeah, okay, I don't remember that one, but
yeah, soldiers in the streets. Yeah, soldiers in the streets. Okay, thank you, Mike.
You're
good
welcome.
to hear from you. It's a talkback today. We're doing 2 hours from now on, so there's another full hour ahead with lots of time to take your calls on lots of issues. 1-833-668-2577. Be right back. Wrap up hour 1 here with help from some calls from Calgary. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Second hour of our talk back. We'd love it if you join the conversation. 1-833-668-2577. We've been kicking around some issues, like the Liberals warning that the Conservatives have a hidden agenda. That the Conservatives aren't being honest about some of their policies. Do you think the Conservatives have a hidden agenda? What could be part of the hidden agenda? There is now a 100% tariff on any electric vehicle imported into Canada from China. Those tariffs came into effect today. Right track, wrong track with that policy. What do you think about the push that's on from many politicians in conservative circles to close supervised consumption sites, saying they've been a failure, they make everything worse, they're drug dens, some of the language that we heard? Right move, wrong move? Could it make the drug crisis even worse? What's your opinion? Minimum wage going up today in 4 Canadian provinces. In Ontario, it's hitting $17.20 an hour. $17.20 an hour. Some people say it should be 20. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Adam, thanks for waiting in Halifax. Adam, hi there.
Yeah, no worries. How you doing, Rob?
I'm good, Adam. Good to hear from you.
Good. I just wanted to make a quick comment, 2 quick comments, one on the foreign interference thing. People get accused before charges all the time, and I just don't see why the politicians in this case seem to get a pass. I mean, Diddy just got charged a week ago, but we've been hearing about that for about a year now.
Years, yeah.
This morning, right? So, and even this morning on your news channel, there's a famous, very wealthy Nova Scotian businessman who is now in front of the CRA for $80 million in tax fraud.
Oh, yes, I read that story. Yeah.
So now, I mean, I just think it's awful all the way around that anybody's name should be put out there before, any kind of judicial process. I think it's awful because, I mean, half of the people that listened to that news report this morning about the wealthy Nova Scotian, half of those people now think he's a tax fraud. It's just the nature of, how we take things in. And I just think that's wrong all the way around. But if it is going to happen, I just don't see why politicians in this case should get a pass. If there's any names out there, throw it out there. It happens all the time.
Happens all the time, and what, they're being held to a different standard, you're saying, right?
It almost seems like it, or somehow they're able to suppress it coming out. I don't know. I know that sounds very conspiratory, but it almost kind of get that sense, That's my take on that. As far as the EVs go, I actually think a different reason why they're putting the tariffs on them. I believe that if we were flooded with Chinese electric vehicles right now, that it would really show how poor our infrastructure is, because we would just be, we wouldn't be able to handle it. We don't have the charging stations. We don't have the capacity.
Okay.
I work with quite a lot of electricians in my industry, and the gauge of wire that we run locally on the power lines and everything, it's not enough to keep up with if everybody just switched over. All of those power lines would have to come down, new higher gauge ones would have to go up. And that's not so bad when you're dealing with towers, but when you've got to rip up underground wires that are in nicer neighborhoods where all the wires are underground, like, how are you doing that?
Okay.
How are you upgrading all those wires? I just think it would show the poorness of the introduction of the EV industry if you got flooded with Chinese cars. And
Like
I think maybe they want to
fragility of the electrical infrastructure would be exposed for all to see, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much better.
Okay.
Said. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. That's really interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think there are other things at work as well, Adam. I thank you for your call. Really, really appreciate hearing from you in Halifax today. I think we're following the Americans' lead here, and I think we want to make sure that our trade policy is aligned with the elephant in the room, and that's the United States. The United States led the charge on this, putting a 100% tariff on these vehicles, essentially doubling the price. And we have gone and done the same thing. And I think it all comes down to the value and the volume of trade. If you think about our trading relationship with the United States, just between one province and one state, the province of Ontario and the state of Michigan, the trade between that one province and that one U.S. state every year is more than the value of the trade that happens between all of Canada and all of China in any given year. Just the trade between Ontario and Michigan, which is probably all autos and auto parts, is about $80 billion a year, which is more than the value of the goods traded between China and Canada. And, the overall value of trade between Canada and the United States, it's $1 trillion a year. It dwarfs what we do with China. I think that's a big reason why the Canadian government wants to do this. They accuse China of dumping these EVs into markets all over the world, and they're not going to be allowed to do that here because we want to make the Americans happy. Our trading relationship is with the Americans much more important than our trading relationship with China. That's I think that a big reason, goes a long way in explaining why this is happening. Dave in Halifax. Thank you for calling, Dave. Hi there, Dave.
Hi, good afternoon, Rob. I had two things. One on the Chinese interference issue that's going on. Why doesn't the government simply come out with a statement that there's an investigation, we have suspended the individuals involved, probably with pay because they're feds, and then just carry on from there? At least I think that would show the Canadian people that they're being somewhat responsive to what people are asking, while not still naming names. I think the more important part is they're not in the position to continue that while the investigation is ongoing.
Okay. You do see what some of the concerns that other callers have raised with me in the past when we get into this. Do you really want to ruin people's reputations over allegations? Not even charges, just allegations.
Yeah, I think that if my suggestion of suspending them without naming them, I don't think that's going to out them. And at the same time, it answers the concern about, they're still sitting in the chair doing what they were doing. At least this way there'd be some assurance that, they weren't.
Okay. You know how hard it is to keep a secret on Parliament Hill, right?
Oh, absolutely impossible. Right. But that's got nothing to do with, anybody outing them unless social media takes over and it gets out that way. It happens with other individuals in power, police officers I'm thinking of specifically. Their names are announced. They're under investigation. They're suspended and put on administrative duty. So how is this any different?
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, hey,
Yeah,
Are you there?
sure. Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah.
I just had one more thing on the Chinese tax on Chinese vehicles. When I was speaking with Dave, he told me something I didn't know. Apparently, this applies to Tesla vehicles that are going to be shipped into North America. Now,
the Tesla vehicles that are made in China. Yeah.
Correct. Now, I didn't know that before I spoke to him, so thanks, Dave, for enlightening me. But what I found strange is I haven't heard nor have I read anything out of Musk relative to the tariffs. And now maybe I've missed something, but that's why I called.
No, I haven't seen anything on that. No,
Yeah,
but he was demanding tariffs on cars, Chinese-made cars imported into the United States, saying it would be an existential threat to the U.S. auto sector if those vehicles were allowed into the United States. I would imagine he has the same opinion on those vehicles coming into Canada.
Well, I'm surprised that he hasn't made any reaction relative to the tax. Because does that not, if his vehicles are included under that umbrella, does that not make him subject to the 100% tariff?
I suspect so. I'd have to read a little bit more about how it would actually impact the Tesla vehicles. I mean, it's not really aimed at the Tesla vehicles because the Tesla vehicles are, let's face it, they're higher end vehicles as opposed to the BYD vehicles that could go for the equivalent of like $13,000, right?
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, a car made in China is a car made in China, correct?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
The value of it shouldn't be the issue. But as I say, I wasn't aware that the imports into North America were going to be covered by that tariff, and I'm surprised that we haven't heard more noise out of Musk.
All right, thank you for your call, Dave.
Rob.
Yep, 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback Hour 2, and lots of time to take your calls on lots of hot issues today. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
1-833-668-2577 is the number to call. It's David Smith here. If you're wondering what's happening, loyal listeners to this show will know that Rob Snow hosts remotely from a remote studio, and as anyone who works with any kind of technology will also know, sometimes things break. We've had a failure in our connection point to Rob Snow. It's being reset and worked on right now. We expect to have him back momentarily, but until then, I will be keeping you company here on News Radio. It's the second half of our new and extended Talkback feature here on Now You Know. 1-833-668-2577 is the number to call. We do have a caller on the line. It's Joe in Kitchener. Joe, do you want to talk to me or would you like to wait for Rob? You're on the air, sir.
It really doesn't matter. It's, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
You want to talk about Chinese tariffs on EVs,
yeah? The Chinese government has been at this for a while, and they've been acquiring significant key assets and resources across the globe. And if I'm not mistaken, they currently own the majority of the world's supply of lithium. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where they stand with that. So not only that, but they combine all their resources to supply their factories with cheap materials and labor. A guy works for a bowl of rice a day over there, where a union worker here is getting like $65-70 an hour with benefits. So it's not a fair system. It's not a fair comparison. And the Chinese don't take a dump without a plan. You know what I'm saying? They figured this out a long time ago, and they've been planning this for a long time. It's not a fair system. We aren't comparing apples to apples here. So
you've outlined. You've got all of the facts right there, Joe. You have outlined the nature of the problem perfectly. But given all of that is the case, do you think it's right for Canada to have protectionist tariffs to keep Chinese steel, aluminum, and electric vehicles out of the country?
Absolutely.
You
do you know why?
Okay.
Do you want the government to start buying up all the oil fields and buying up all the mines they can?
Not particularly, no.
Well, that's how it works. I mean, if we're not going to buy all the resources to hand over to the private sector so that they can compete on an equal footing with China, then how else is this supposed to work?
Okay. The flip side, the devil's advocate position there, Joe, is that we have an electric vehicle sales mandate in this country. We're all supposed to be driving all electric cars within a decade from now, within 11 years from now. And how are we going to do that if the average electric car is costing $40,000, $50,000, $60,000? I mean, I can't afford a car that costs that much. There aren't really electric vehicles used on the market. So how do you square that circle?
Well, wait for it, because it gets better. Who do you think that the Canadian and American manufacturers have to buy their raw materials from? Wait for it. It's China. Wow. Isn't that wonderful? So now they can dump their own lithium on the market to their own manufacturers for free, essentially. But somebody always pays a price back home in China.
So
we just
Joe,
don't know how their convoluted
right,
system works.
Let me ask you a slightly different question then. Do you think that it's more worthwhile to electrify the vehicle fleet to reduce Canada's emissions to save the planet, or more worthwhile to not be economically dependent on China? If you had to pick one road.
Well, the easy answer is not to be economically dependent on China. Holy crap, look in Alberta at all the natural gas and oil resources that we have. Look at the mining potential up north in Canada for all the strategic metals. I mean, we have the resources here. It's just, do you want to invest in that? Who's going to step up? Which billionaire wants to drop his drawers and set up shop and mine the north? And then you have to deal with all of the bureaucracy and everybody who has a stake in all of the land and all of the resources and all of the, let's make this minority group happy. Let's make that. China doesn't do that, man.
Yeah.
They just exploit whatever the hell they want so that they get ahead of everybody else.
I hear you, Joe. I hear you. Thank you for your call today, Joe. Appreciate it.
Right.
Take care. That's Joe in Kitchener. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio, and I believe we have connected again with Rob Snow. Hello, Rob.
Yeah, the beauties of remote work, David.
Well, you win some, you lose some, I guess.
No, Joe makes some good points. And I think that's, what he's outlining there, I think, is the position of the Ford government in Ontario, that it's a lot more than just these battery plants that they want in southern Ontario. They view this as a chance to create a whole, I guess the buzzword would be, ecosystem, Dave, that it involves the critical minerals, critical elements of northern Ontario. And it involves not just, the battery components in southern Ontario, but it's about creating mining jobs and economic viability, prosperity for First Nations in northern Ontario, and therefore it's good for all of Canada. So, that's kind of the vision of the Ford government. But the fact is, we have a government in Ottawa that is obsessed with people driving electric vehicles to the point where it's going to mandate these electric vehicles by the year 2035. The only car you can find. And the fact is that when you double the price, you're shutting out a lot of potential buyers. And transportation is, one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the country. So, as you say, square that circle.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Final half hour of what will be 2 hours of talk back from now on, and still lots of time to take lots of calls. At 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. We've been kicking around any number of issues. Made in China EVs, those tariffs are in effect now. the Conservatives and a hidden agenda, which is a classic attack line from the Liberals against Conservatives, accusing the Conservatives of having a hidden agenda, not being open, not being honest about some of their policies. Do you think there's an ounce of truth to that they have a hidden agenda? What might be part of a hidden agenda? Supervised injection sites, supervised consumption sites, maybe a conversation for another day. Certainly not something that's going away anytime soon. Minimum wages, we've been talking about that today as well. Some people, unsolicited, have brought up, the topic of foreign interference, identifying parliamentarians who have been at least identified by intelligence agencies of being the actual language in the report was witting or unwitting, accomplices, if you will, doing the bidding of other countries. Canadian parliamentarians, people at the highest levels of elected and appointed office in this country, is what the report said. Interfering, aiding in interference. We don't know who any of these people are. The way things are going, we may never know who these people are. That's not sitting well with some people today. Certainly the Liberals don't seem to be in any rush to reveal what Liberals may be involved. The Conservatives say they want to know, but maybe they're just saying that because they know we won't find out. A lot of Canadians and some of the callers today have expressed the opinion they deserve to know who these people are, what they've been up to, and where their loyalties lie. And are they loyal to Canada? Are they working in the best interests of Canadians? Or are they basically on the take to benefit other countries and not Canada? It is serious stuff. I mean, when the news first broke out of this report called NSICOP, the word treason was being used to describe the actions of some of these individuals. Treason. So some people, it's still not sitting well with others that we don't know who these individuals are. But on Parliament Hill, you have a top secret committee. It's made up of only about a dozen people or so. It's a combination of MPs and senators, and they're sworn to secrecy. Because the information they have access to, they are state secrets. So it's called NSICOP. And there are members on that committee from most of the parties, MPs, some senators as well. And they get to look at the top secret reports from the intelligence agencies. And, what's been uncovered as the country's been investigating foreign interference, it is damning stuff, no doubt about it. Some people, whoever they happen to be, all we know is that they're MPs, senators, or former MPs or former senators, either semi-wittingly or wittingly, helped other countries, primarily China and India, interfere in the affairs of this country. And among the allegations is that some of them were doing this to, quote, further their own interests, whatever that means, to further their own interests. I guess that could mean any number of things. Standing in a diaspora community. It could mean bags of cash. We just don't know. Because the report is redacted, it's censored because, these are national security secrets. But wouldn't you like to know? I can understand that if that's your opinion. Do we have MPs and senators taking bribes from other countries? If we do, should we know who they are? How do you go about doing that? What do you do when you have people in the House of Commons or in the Senate communicating with foreign diplomats in this country so that diaspora groups can be mobilized to swing various swing ridings in nomination races and in election campaigns, or maybe in leadership races? Taking money, getting funding. The report says the true source of the money is hidden so as not to raise any suspicions. One of the accusations was that parliamentarians were sharing sensitive government information with foreign countries, so that foreign countries could then turn around and pressure parliamentarians in this country into voting certain ways on certain issues. The idea that you would have parliamentarians selling out other parliamentarians by using privileged information that they have no business sharing at all, with intelligence agencies of other countries. And some of it started right after some MPs were elected. They won, and this is what they started doing. That's what we know what was in that report. And yet, nothing is known about the identities of these individuals. And that doesn't sit well with some people. How do you do that? How do you reveal who these people are so that they'll have full due process? 1-833-668-2577. Brian in Fergus. Hi, Brian.
Oh.
Hello, Brian.
Hello. How are you?
I hear you just fine now, Brian. Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, just a comment on the minimum wage. I think there's I don't think my opinion is going to be very popular with a lot of people. First of all, but
okay.
I don't know that the minimum wage I look at as that it's supposed to be a when we think about the living wage and people saying that it's not high enough, the minimum wage not being up to the, I just don't know that you're supposed. What am I trying to say? It's supposed to suck a little bit. I mean,
yes.
there's supposed to be a level of income. I don't know that you're supposed to be able to have your own house or your own apartment and live by yourself and totally sustain yourself. I grew up on a farm. And the way I learned that there's certain jobs that I don't want to do, like picking stones and throwing hay and shoveling the chicken poop out of the barn, was because you do it and it's not fun. And now I'm over a decade into owning a small business. Everybody on our team is paid well above the minimum wage, but the minimum wage just is what it is. I don't think we need to try to raise the minimum wage to the point where everybody, has a nice apartment and, all these other things. It's, I don't think if you have two people, one of whom has a good income, the other one maybe has a minimum wage job that's a supplemental income for the household. I mean, that's how people, I think, put stuff together. So I think there's too much pressure on getting the minimum wage up to get everybody to a certain standard. I just don't think that's sustainable.
Okay, yeah, very good point on the minimum wage. I'll make a few more points, I think, as we make our way to the news at the top of the hour. I thank you for your call. Brian in Fergus, it's our Talkback Hour here on Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's get right back to our next caller. Let's go to Mel is in Alberta. Thanks for calling, Mel. What's on your mind?
Okay. As far as these people that have been working to line their pockets and help foreign countries, there has to be a way of controlling them. And what I was thinking about is CSIS should let the leader of the party know, each party individually, of their individual members in their caucuses. Okay? And then the leader of the party could prevent their members from voting on certain things that might, work to the benefit of foreign countries.
Okay.
But the information can't be shared between the parties. I know, like the comment where you can't keep your secret in Ottawa, but there has to be a way of doing that so that some of the members, they're just told straight out that they can't vote at certain things because they always know what's going to be coming up for a vote. And that way they can just abstain from being in the parliament for the vote. And I know if parties are really tight as far as, how many seats they have,
sure,
some of the parties might not agree with that, but there has to be something done to control these individuals that are lining their pockets or just helping foreign countries.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. And, you think about the time that we're in right now. We have this minority government, this supply and confidence agreement is gone now. So in theory, an election could happen at any time. I don't think it's going to happen this year, probably not until the spring of next year, but that's just my own opinion. But there's going to be, between now and then, candidates will have to be nominated in ridings. There have been concerns raised in the past about nomination races being swayed one way or the other to the benefit of, various countries in the world, that maybe the Chinese government would like a particular candidate who would be easier on China.
Yeah, can I make one more comment?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Right. Yeah.
As far as being nominated in your ridings, one thing that has to change is the party leader should not be, his signature shouldn't be required for somebody to run in a particular riding, which is what happens right now. The riding association themselves, representing their city, they can vet the people that want to run and have a runoff with the ones that are going to be allowed, because then you can, when you vet people, you can figure out what they're going to support and stuff like that. But right now, one of the things they have to do, like the perfect place would be, the leaders don't sign the nomination forms. The party, now I lost my train of thought.
Well, that's okay.
Itself,
I guess, Mel, my point would be, we're coming into a time when there are going to be lots of nomination races, and then within a year there'll be a federal election.
Yeah.
And we don't know if there are going to be people running in that election who have been compromising Canada to the benefit,
one of the things too,
not only of other countries, but to benefit themselves, to enrich themselves in one way or another.
Yeah. See, if the party leaders were notified ahead of time about nominations, maybe they could get CSIS to do some investigations, because right now a person, because the leader has to sign their nomination forms, they are, I guess, got to be supportive of the party, not their constituency. If they don't,
all right, okay,
if they don't,
interesting point.
Support the leader, then they don't get nominated for the next election.
Okay.
Thank you. It's a bad thing right now. Everybody has to represent the party, not their constituents.
All right.
And
thank you, Mel, for your call. Good to hear from you today. It is our Talkback Hour here on News Radio 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Be right back and wind things down with your help. Love to hear from you on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about any number of issues. The tariffs on electric vehicles imported from China, that officially came into effect today. 100% tariff on those electric vehicles imported from China. Not that we're importing electric vehicles from China, but why would they now? I guess now that these tariffs will double the price. A push on to close many supervised injection sites, supervised consumption sites. I would say watch that space all across the country. A lot of pushback to the whole harm reduction approach to fighting the drug crisis. And minimum wages, that's been a fun conversation. $17.20 an hour, $17.20 an hour for the minimum wage. And the hidden agenda, you're hearing that more and more from the liberals about the conservatives. They're going to push. It's going to be a two-front attack on that. The first one's going to be about abortion, and then the other one will be about cuts. Those will be the ongoing lines of attacks from the liberals about Pierre Poilievre and the conservatives. Cuts and austerity. You hear it all the time from the liberals. We're investing in people. We're investing in people. We have all of these programs that are either up and running or they're in the works, and they're going to be of benefit to regular people. And all of those programs are threatened if you elect Pierre Poilievre and the conservatives because they have a hidden agenda, because they're not open and honest about the future of all these programs. And they'll cite you chapter and verse on the things that they claim will be at risk, like the new dental care program or the new pharmacare program, $10 a day childcare, school meal program. In fact, on the pharmacare program, there's actually news about that today. The Globe and Mail reported this morning, quote, Health Minister Mark Holland has written a Senate committee studying the pharmacare legislation to confirm the government intends for the diabetes medications and contraceptives involved are to be paid for and administered through a public plan. A public plan. In other words, not your own benefits plan that you may have through your employer, but a government plan. Quote, Ottawa plans to negotiate bilateral agreements with provinces to provide universal, single-payer, first-dollar coverage for a range of contraceptives and diabetes medications. It's a pretty good scoop today in the paper. Because this is one of the things that the conservatives have kind of raised red flags about. Maybe he cuts it. I don't know. He'd have to win the next election first. But part of the hidden agenda narrative is that the liberals are going to make your life better by creating programs like pharmacare and like dental care, like $10 a day childcare, like a school meal program, and all of that is going to be at risk if you elect a conservative government. And so would access to abortion. That's another one of their claims. That would be at risk as well. That's what the liberals are going to say. If you listen very closely to Pierre Poilievre on the pharmacare stuff, that's exactly what he's been warning about. That you might be happy with your drug plan the way it is right now, and that the liberal pharmacare program has the potential to replace it, and the government would instead run your drug plan, and you don't want that, according to him. Talkback Hour. That's it for today. Be back tomorrow. The latest breaking news is coming up next. This is News Radio.